So welcome to the FIsionaries podcast, sponsored by Alkami. My name is Marous. The FIsionaries podcast shines a light on financial institutions at the cutting edge of digital transformation, providing you with the tips and tricks to elevate your digital game no matter what size your organization. On this episode of the FIsionaries podcast, I am at the Alkami Co Lab event in Grapevine, Texas. I'm joined by Amy Krasikov. Did I get that right?
Very classic.
Okay, Krasikov. I'm going to go with that. Vice President of Digital Experience at Raiz Federal Credit Union. Amy will provide an inside look into their extensive overhaul of the core and their mobile banking platforms that they did in 18 months. So anybody who's out there making excuses for not being able to do it or not wanting to do it, Amy's the person to talk to. They revamped their digital infrastructure that in such a quick pace and marketed in such a way that they had 20% rate of adoption in less than 24 hours, escalating to 50% within the first week. That's pretty crazy. So more importantly, their digital banking experience ratings escalated. So it's a win-win all the way around. So we want to get into that a little bit and talk about what did it take, how did she do it, and what's next. So Raiz Federal Credit Union is located in El Paso, Texas, and has a passion for knowledge and pursuit of growth. Grounded in their heritage, it is the El Paso Area Federal Credit Union, founded in 1936. They now have 70,000 members and provide a full range of financial services. So, Amy, before we dive into the specific topics, can you tell me a little bit more about you and a little bit about Raiz Credit Union?
Absolutely. So, Vice President of Digital Experience, I moved to El Paso 2 years ago. I'm actually a native of Colorado. Been in the credit union industry, it's sad to admit, but almost 25 years. It's crazy how quickly that time passes.
Gotcha, yes.
And Raiz, I love it. It is an absolutely amazing place. And if you've never been to El Paso, it is a little secret in Texas that is amazing. If you ever want the best food, oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm going to stop there because y'all are going to want to come. So Raiz has really transformed in the last several years. So it moved from El Paso Area Teachers Federal Credit Union. We rebranded 2 years ago to Raiz Federal Credit Union, also pronounced Raiz for our Spanish speakers, and its base is root. And the reason why, when we rebranded, we really want to live where we began. Teachers are our roots, and education is the base of everything. So we're really honoring our educators through that space. It's an amazing organization that's going to continue to focus on leading edge digital technology and moving forward as innovators in that space.
So change sucks. I say this on almost every podcast at some point, and it's not fun for people. It's not fun for companies. And with it comes surprises. Most people would freak out around a core conversion. Certainly one that was a complete rip and replace, as they call it sometimes. And on top of that, your mobile banking conversion. 18 months. I know you can go on days and days for this, but how in the world did you do that?
So think about the core conversion is the first foundational layer in banking. You have to have a strong core. And our challenge is that we had a very aged core. So we really could not upgrade.
Everybody does.
Yeah, everybody does. But
Yes.
we really could not upgrade our digital platform on the existing core that we were on. So we needed to move forward and find a solution that will help us advance and continue to advance and be more agilely focused, if I want to use it that way. So we selected, and when I say it took 18 months, of course, prior to that was a year of selection, and they selected the core. And I came in really right as the project was beginning. So I got to come into pre-selected vendors and move forward with an amazing project, and they launched core first. So they focused on core for the first 6 months. And then in December, we started mapping our digital banking.
What year would it have been that you...
So 2022. So 2022, we converted in 2023.
Wow.
So started in 22. So December of 22, we started mapping all of our digital banking needs and really familiarizing ourselves with our digital banking platform, which is Alkami.
Yep.
And we then launched our Alkami project in January, and we were live in July 24th, 2023. So core conversion, digital banking, and about 22 plus additional vendors that connect into the digital banking platform.
Which is interesting because you've been banking long enough to know that plug and play scenario is so important, but it's relatively new because vendors would fight against each other. Your core provider would say, no, we don't want to use this, or you don't want to do this. But now every one of your solution providers really need to work with each other seamlessly. Otherwise, they're going to be out, because the last thing you need is friction internally to build a non-friction experience for consumers, because they're going to feel it. And you know, you're not a huge organization. You don't have a lot of people sitting around. How did you delegate what had to be done both internally and externally? And how important then is your partner to say, I need to give you, I'm going to use American game, I'm going to give you the football and make you run down the field, but I can't run with you. I got to trust you to get to where we're trying to get.
I won't sugarcoat it. It was difficult. We partnered with a project management team to really help keep the entire project on track, to help keep all of the pieces of the projects moving. So they really focused on the core and the core innovation and the core project in terms of each of the little nuances that needed to happen, and ensure that each of the vice presidents and business line leaders were getting what needed to accomplish done. And then in terms of the digital side, I have a small digital team, at the time 3, and they really led the entire digital banking conversion and helped coordinate with the groups, and then reported back up to that project manager with the core. When you're talking about our IT teams, our IT team created a group called Business Process Solutions, and they were a group of 3 at that time as well, who were leading with the project manager, who was a partner that we contracted with, to make sure all of the business line leaders were answering the questions, getting the worksheets done, doing the testing. And then the organization dedicated, and this is crazy, in an organization with about 200 employees, dedicated almost half of the employees to the core project.
Okay, so we talk about the technology, we talk about what it takes to make all this happen, but the reality is we're dealing with people. We're dealing with people who in today's world are, if they don't say it, they certainly feel it, are threatened by the innovations we're taking, because going from old to new means that jobs change, responsibilities change. Some jobs are lost, some could be built. How do you get over that? How did the organization get over that hurdle? Or was it a cultural mission from the top that drove that? Because we know how people feel. Tellers feel this. Everybody feels it. When you're getting almost everybody involved in the project, how do you keep them from holding back and saying, well, I think we got to leave this the same because it's my job? Yeah.
Yeah, both, actually. When you talk about cultural and top-down, there's a lot of culture related to that. You have to have buy-in at all levels in this kind of organizational change. I will say, though, it is about communication, constant communication with the teams, and helping empower them. And that's one of our core values, is empowerment. We want our team members to empower, uplift, and impact. So when you're looking at your job and you're looking at your role, it was constantly reminding them, you have the opportunity to define this. You have the opportunity to change and improve this for the better. Look at what you need to do, not how you used to do it. You know, were there setbacks? Absolutely. Were there folks who were challenged with the change? Absolutely. And it was even post-launch, it was reevaluating, where are we now? What changes are not necessarily where we wanted them to be? Because not everything goes well in a conversion. If you've never done them, you might not know, but not everything goes well. Yeah. And you have some post-work to do. So following that, from the leadership level, we have spent the last 6 months really ensuring that all of the teams understand their roles and their jobs well, and that they still have that empowerment to make a difference and change how they work.
We interviewed, not on this podcast, but my other podcast, a person by the name of Liz Wolverton from Synovus in Georgia. She focused on exactly what you said, which is, if you communicate well, nobody feels threatened, because they'll realize they have a path going forward. And that's so important. Now, if you look back now, was it more technology or culture that drove the change that you had?
We absolutely had to move forward because we were in a system that was being sunsetted. So we had to make a choice.
Oh my gosh. So this is a little push versus shove.
Yeah. But I will say that in terms of culture, with where we want to be and being digital first organization that wants to be and strives to be leading edge. It was the sunset was the opportunity to really live and breathe who we are.
So I often talk about the GPS of financial services in different ways I talk about it, but one of the things I talk about is the fact that you can't get any place without knowing where you're going. I understand that your old system was being sunsetted, but what was your vision of where you had to land at the end of this, or at least the end of the conversion part of it? What were you trying to achieve?
We were trying to achieve a improved experience where the technology was not the friction layer to member experience. And when you think about member experience, it starts with the employee. If you have a branch model, you need a solution that is very easy to both train and use at the employee level in order to then really serve and build relationships with your members. And on the other side of the coin, we really wanted a system that we could have, as you mentioned, plug and play. We have no developers today. We have, and that's
So you're relying on your partners for that.
we're really relying on partners.
Which, by the way, I believe is the only way to do it, because the developers have to be at the front edge of transformation, while if you're doing it, you'll tend to lag only because someone else is getting the upper hand. But it's, again, finding the right partners, making sure they commit to making it so you have the best of X, Y, and Z, and letting them do their thing. I use reference this often, but I had a gentleman in Kenya. Actually, I was doing a bank conference there, and I said, "What's the biggest challenge to digital transformation?" He goes, "Bankers who can't get out of their own way." That, again, it's a change mentality that says, if you don't buy into it, it will fail on its own weight, if nothing else. So your overall experience was where your goal was. What was the biggest challenge during this transformation, both on the digital banking or online banking as well as the core?
Doing it at the same time
Yeah.
really was.
Would you do it again that way, though?
I would stagger it.
Yeah.
So
How did you start with core?
exactly, and get Core actually launched 3 months prior to launching your digital.
I'm sorry, I love it. 3 months prior. Yeah, we don't want to lag. I mean, you're the speed demon. I like this. This is pretty good. Yes.
Yeah, at the same time on the same day cause challenges. And when you're trying to make decisions with the core and you need to pivot with the core, now you're waiting on a decision with digital banking because you absolutely need that piece of core to be done.
Yeah.
And that caused us to really be tight at the end with getting our digital where we needed it to be. And we had to make some strategic decisions to do a day 2 type launch on some of the features with digital banking to really hit that goal.
Yeah, because they're both huge on their own. Now, it's interesting because when you talk about the whole transformation process and the speed at which you did it, you still are converting the entire core. It doesn't matter what size organization it is, because it's not a volume thing. It's not how many customers you have changes how hard the core is. No, you have the same number of services as everybody else. What do you think makes it so it takes so long for some institutions to change their core, change their online banking? I know some online banking processes that have gone 3 to 5 years. I know at least one core that I believe we're on its 12th year right now, and I get worried that what started is now old. And what do you think makes it so that your organization seem to do it in a magical time period, but other organizations really struggle? Because you get an idea of what's going on around you.
You do. You really have to commit to the project and the time frame. We all have priorities and we all have fires that happen.
Yeah.
And in business, you have to really make that commitment that this is the top thing we're doing as an organization. This is where we're dedicating our time and our resources. Everything else goes on hold. And that can be difficult because you might miss an opportunity to become a leader in something because you're focused on this one thing.
Right.
But if you don't do that one thing now, then as you say, with a core that's 14 years aged, you're so far back, you are now needing to restart. Yeah. And that was something actually our CEO said, because I will say when you're thinking about change, it's very challenging and doing these big projects all at the same time. And it was our core conversion, our digital banking system. And I said 20 plus integrations. It's also bill pay. And bill pay, if you've ever done a bill pay conversion, is in itself a challenge. So doing all of those at one time we as a senior leadership team pushed back and said, why are we doing these all at once? This is a lot of change for our employees and our members to ingest. And I really like the way our CEO phrased it, was that we could stagger these, but if you stagger and do a core, now you're 2 to 5 years out from doing a digital. Now you're 2 to 5 years out from doing, and by the time you're done, you're now, as you said, so far out, you're 15 years out, you're now so aged and no longer relevant. When are you ever going to catch up?
That's extraordinarily interesting because, again, I'm fortunate enough to meet a lot of organizations, and it really sometimes gets down to the CEO finally saying their vision is, I can't afford this. But that CEO's, their job's completely changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, he could lose every employee in the process.
Mm-hmm.
But now on the consumer side, the member side, change also impacts them. And what happens behind the scenes is not really invisible.
Right.
As much as we try to make it so that, hey, we're still doing the same way we've done it. How did that impact your members, and how did you alleviate those challenges?
So the core conversion, we went from an account-centric to now member-centric, and that's really difficult for a lot of cores. And when you asked the previous question, what makes it so hard to change, that's one of the reasons. So a previous core I was on in my past life, they were also account-centric, and their provider offered to switch to a member-centric. And by that, I mean you use your social security number to aggregate all of the accounts under one person, versus an account-centric, which is often the bank model too, where you have each account individual and you can have multiple accounts all under you, right? Well,
which is impossible for the consumer, by the way.
Right. But we had that, and most of institutions do. And we were thinking about how to manage that change. Every decision that you make, you have to do it with the consumer's best interest in mind. How are they going to, what are the uses that they can do, and how is it going to affect them? And you need to keep that in the forefront when you're making your decisions. And the way that we handled, I'll say, aggregating from 5 accounts down to 1 was we kept the oldest. And that's how we communicated to try to simplify that for the members. And it really is about communication. We chose to communicate very early about the core. So when you're talking about core and digital, we started in December. We weren't even going live for 7 months. So we let them know it was coming. Our CEO did a video about it. We started doing communication. And then there's these little touch points. And then there's these reminders to let them know that this change is happening.
So they continually felt the good things coming.
Exactly.
Very much like I laugh because for the institutions, you never see their name on your, oh, by the way, these accounts these apps are being updated today. You never find a financial institution. You're actually including the members to say, we're doing this now, which can trigger anxiety just by communication. By the way, we're taking this thing away from you and we're going to change it to this. And people freak out at times just by the visual aspects being different. But you included them in the process, which, as you look back, what was a negative surprise for your members? What created the most angst that maybe if you knew that was, because it sometimes could be crazy basic that you'd say, miss that one.
Well, the most angst really when you are aggregating, thinking about the digital experience connected to a core.
Yeah.
I have a username for each one of those individual accounts that I've had to log in with. So which username do I now use when I go to log into your new system? I don't remember which one was to my older one. So I would say that caused a lot of angst.
So the aggregation that has a beautiful endpoint creates its own challenges because the consumer, I know myself, works with these independently, and I don't know one password versus another, let alone how they interact and which ones are connected. I mean, I had a situation with a bank where I had money transferred from one account to another to make up for an overdraft that happened. And I could not for the life of me figure out why the bank showed up a day later. And that aggregation really hadn't been smooth. Or aggregation with other organizations, you said, payments or bill pay. Those create their own challenges too, because we're changing the process. We're moving chairs on the deck.
And that also was the unintended there, what caused some angst was you might have had an e-bill set up with bill payer A, but bill payer B doesn't have that relationship with the vendor, or that vendor is accepting new enrollments in their e-bill system at that point in time. So you as the consumer go to see your e-bill and it's not available. And you do get a paper bill a cycle later, but there was a delay.
So the members, I take it now, from the numbers, are pretty bought in. They've also learned new things and learned new ways to do things. Obviously, you said communication about 20 times so far. The communication with your branch people, which are really the point of angst. You know, if I got a problem, I may not go on the branch very often, but that's the time I'm going to be doing it. I'm not going to be making that phone call. Was it a higher or lower anxiety point when you did the conversion? Were you surprised by how well it did, or were you surprised by, geez, we didn't see some things coming? For both.
Both, actually. I would say both. And we prepared in a couple ways on that member side and the communication side. So we launched a conversational chatbot with AI with our conversion. So we
Good timing.
The intention to do the off-hour support so that they could enroll or they could register, they could figure out what their password was or what they needed to do, and they could get into their accounts. We also then prepped our staffing, and we had more support. So we did subject matter experts at each one of our branches. And even if they were back office, because we had so many people involved, and they were there to support our team members. And we also had an additional, if we contracted a call center to do additional call center support for the month after conversion, knowing there's higher volume overall with that support, where people might not understand the aggregation. They don't understand how the payments worked. Maybe they're having challenges logging in. So being able to have that support and have places where our team members, if they couldn't answer the question, where they could go to get that answer quickly was helpful. I think that went well and how that worked. In the part that didn't go well, I think more was that aggregation of those usernames.
Yeah.
That was the part that gave a little bit more challenge for our call center and supporting our members. They were able to figure out what their username is, left authenticating them, help them through it. But that was more challenging.
And the end point is going to be really much better than it was. But getting there was no way around it. You couldn't do it any other way.
And explaining to people you can't convert their password. Well, why couldn't you convert my password? Because that's encrypted and that's in the other system, and you wouldn't want us to do that.
Exactly. You want to complain, you got something to complain about. Yeah. So when you look back, how long have you been completely converted?
Oh, no, about this is March, so almost 9 months.
My God, not even a year.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Oh, we are looking at...
What was it as digitally ready as what you thought it was going to be?
Our online account opening and the account opening overall is not digitally ready and as ready as I want it to be. We need a much prettier and easier to get through the front door, a much faster front door to get through. And we need also to improve the flow for our loan application and mortgage application.
So both the loan applications, dual account applications, which anybody listen to my podcast, any of them, they'll know those are bugaboos for me. They are things that drive me nuts that, we say we're digital, we can do it digital, but it takes 15 minutes. You go,
right.
No one has that kind of patience in this world. On the other hand, I will argue for you in this case that if you hadn't done the digital conversion the way you did, you would have had a hard time, I think, from a mentality and culture standpoint, doing what really is necessary to make online or digital account opening and lending happen. Because the biggest bugaboo, when you can partner with the best company out there to get down 3 minutes, but if you start by going, by the way, we still believe in driver's license to be the ID, you're not going to get there no matter what system you have. But now that you've done everything you've done, I would think the mentality is almost everybody's pulling the same direction, going faster, better, bed. Don't make excuses. Get everybody in the room.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I am appreciative that our compliance team is challenging themselves on the ways that we can do non-documentary identification and what are all of the back-end checks and solutions we can use to automate and improve that flow. There's a lot of fun vendors we've been looking at and a lot of ways we can...
There's some great solutions out there.
There really are.
And great partnerships within solutions. But what's funny is organizations buy these and then still put the roadblock in place. And I feel sorry for the vendors who go, you're not getting what you paid for. You're not going to be happy. You will make excuses as to, I'm happy. Right. You're not. That wasn't your vision.
Right.
And the new customer volume that's going to come with that is extraordinarily strong. But I would argue that by building a culture that says change is going to be fast, it's going to be disruptive, but it's going to be the end point. We're looking out for the member. You have all the pieces in place to make that whole process easier, because if you hadn't done that way, it's very hard to get to that point. And again, it gets back to the communication, all the things you put in place. And it's interesting because I started going back to COVID days where we had the COVID relief funds that came out. We got told about it on Thursday and had to introduce it on Monday without any idea and the government created it, what could go wrong. But using that as the guide, you've kept that speed, that mentality, that culture of getting it done. It's got to, you were there at the very beginning. You probably remember less about what it was like before that. But for those people who are on board, I have to think that it's a lot better place to work. Because they know the destiny, don't they?
They do. And it's reminding them that we have a human-centered approach. We're always putting the human first, and it's about human dignity. And when you do that, and when you focus on not only high tech, but high service, that's where they start understanding, okay, this is why all of this change is so important. Because we want to move people forward in their financial life. We want to improve their financial wellness. And when you define what that means and you help them see that vision and that they are that guide for the member, how many people understand what to do, what the next step is? How do they move forward in their financial life? They don't know. We do.
They're looking for you.
They're looking for that.
They're looking for a partner that's going to help them with their solutions.
Yes.
I use a lot of analogy, but one of them is they don't want to know what's in my rearview mirror. They want to know what's in my GPS system. So they want the help to say, I'm expecting you with all the information you have. And now you have this major digital conversion. I want to know what I should be doing next without me having to handhold you. We're not there yet as an industry,
right.
But that takes data analytics. How did the conversion change your ability to use data and analytics for better personalization, better engagement, which is a whole lot more than just experience? How did your conversion help that?
Again, the prior system was antiquated, aged. It didn't really allow us to have all the hooks that we needed to pull data out and really analyze it in the way we wanted to. So the conversion was, again, I call it the foundation. I like to think about building a house. It's the foundation.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely had to have that foundation. And now we're starting to put up all the walls so that we can build this beautiful house and open that door and invite everybody in. And when you think about data analytics, that's part of the framing of the house. You have to have everything pulled out and organized. And we have a new business analytics team that is building our data lake, and we'll be starting to line all of that. Everybody's putting together what their executive dashboards need to look like, thinking data first, and what are the questions you need to ask of data to be able to really inform them and make those personalized offers to people so that you are not only offers, but actions. You're helping move them forward. So when you're thinking about fraud, how do you set up alerts? Right. And you haven't set up alerts, let's get you to set up alerts. These are the kinds of alerts that you should be thinking about. How do you set up your the biometrics? How do you enable face recognition? Have you talked about these different ways that you can secure your account beyond a password?
Yeah.
And getting them to engage with that next best action, not only next best offer or service, which might move their financial life forward, but not necessarily protecting their financial entitlement.
Really exciting because I'm putting myself in, by the way, it's a blast because we don't usually get the opportunity to talk to somebody that's done the thing we all wish we could do, but it gets rid of your excuses in this process because you can no longer say the system won't support it. Right. Sorry, the system can support everything right now. And we're only held back by our own ability to get the next job done. So you referenced the foundation of the house. What's the next remodeling job you're going to be doing at Raiz Federal Credit Union?
Account opening. That's the next remodeling job.
What is that? When is that planned for?
We are doing vendor due diligence actually at this time. I'm hoping to get a contract signed by May and something in by end of year, beginning of January.
Okay. So again, everybody, realize we're not talking about annual plans.
No.
We're not talking about, this is not an easy process, but I'll bet you they beat the time period because They don't want to take longer for that than they do for their core conversion. but it's interesting because the mentality is built in. And then when you move to the loans, you're doing the same thing. But your time frame is so much different than a traditional financial institution that automatically goes back to their legacy mindset.
Right.
And says a year or 2 years. And I kid about the fact for onboarding processes, when I do research, about 54% of the financial institutions say they happen. About 37% say we're going to get this year. We're going to make sure it's a priority this year. And the rest say it's not on the priority list. That number has been the same for over a decade, which means all the people that say it's on next year's doesn't get it done. I get the feeling that you have a very strong sense of prioritization within your organization, and that checklist gets done. You become anal as an organization, focused on getting it done. And again, with the ultimate goal being the member is going to benefit, which means the employees are going to benefit and the organization is going to benefit.
Absolutely. And we have created a quarterly roadmap that all of our leadership team has each project, because we're a decentralized organization. So that allows us to make decisions that we need to make to get the job done and keep things moving. And in that, we have to communicate very well as leaders to ensure that we're not overlapping in terms of projects and resources. There's only so much time and resources. And we do. That quarterly roadmap helps us move forward and keep our eye on what's important and where we are and how we're committed to do that. And a question you had asked earlier, one of the things my CEO likes to point out, most organizations will put their digital team inside of an IT group or possibly in marketing. Our digital team is separate and its own unit and outside of that and has continued focus. So that digital team is not only an innovator in the space that it owns, it's a consultant across the organization to ensure that every business line puts digital first and is thinking about that experience and journey for the member.
And I would imagine you bring compliance into the front end of this process rather than the back end to make them bought in. You mentioned it earlier, but we sometimes, in the marketing world, which I came out of, like to bring them in last and going, okay, what are you going to do? Well, that puts them on the spot to do something and not necessarily positive. You bring them in the front end, they become a partner and trying to see how they can make it a partnership organization. And it gets rid of a whole lot of challenges down the road.
Absolutely.
Okay, final question. You need to make a recommendation to financial institutions of all sizes based on your history and your experiences over the last few years. What's your major recommendation?
Oh, my major recommendation. I really like what you said about no excuses. And my major recommendation is to make a plan, communicate that plan, get buy-in on that plan. Buy-in is huge, and not just from the executive team. And buy-in from the team members who will live and execute it is huge. And then move forward with that plan. Take action, take steps, and then measure. Was it successful? Was it not? And where do you need to pivot and change?
Yeah. Such a pleasure. It's great to be at CoLab where there's so much going on. So many innovative people going to be interchanged. I'm sure you have a laundry list of things you need to accomplish while here. Probably a few vendors you have to visit going, okay, either calling them out and going, hey, you got to pull your weight, or, hey, well, you got to come in and see me. But it's a great environment. Thank you so much for sharing your story, because it's extraordinarily unique in the industry for an organization not only to still do a core conversion, but not to do it in pieces, parts, because you can now. Mm-hmm. That's good, but it also makes it so we draw out this process much longer than it has to. I'm glad you survived. I'm glad your team survived, but I can see also why the passion you show and the commitment you show internally, it's very clear why people follow you on what you're envisioning and how you follow your organization. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim, so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks for listening to FIsionaries podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into all the tips and tricks you can use to help elevate your digital game. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to support it, but also share it with coworkers and people outside your organization who may benefit from what we learned. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcast. A special thank you to our senior producer, Leah Hassage, and our audio and video engineer, who's here today, Will Pritz. Thank you very much. Also, be sure to keep listening to this podcast. We're doing a lot of innovative things, and we're talking to people that have really done the things we all are afraid of. Hope we have fun.